Hello and welcome along to this video tutorial in which we will be exploring type in an experimental workshop. Our aims in this workshop are as follows: to understand how to manipulate type, to recognize the role of typography within design, to understand and consider composition and balance, and to explore experimental techniques. So we'll begin by looking at some examples of practitioners and how they have used type within their work. We'll begin with David Carson. He was a graphic designer, very prominent throughout the 1990s, and his experimental use of typography was very influential in the wider art and design world. If we look really closely at his work, you can see how he incorporates composition, typography, and also color. And these are the main characteristics of David Carson's work that we're going to be focusing on and also taking inspiration from within our own work. Now, the second designer we're going to be looking at is Robert Indiana, who was mainly active through the 1980s. And within his work, he incorporates bold, striking colors as well as typography, and also thinks really carefully about composition. So when we are creating our own work within this workshop, I want you guys to think really carefully about how you can take inspiration from both Robert Indiana as well as David Carson. So you're going to be thinking really carefully about color, composition, and typography, and how we can incorporate all three of these artistic values to create some really bright and really striking work. So the workshop is going to be split into a digital part as well as a physical part. And what we're hoping to produce, as you can see on the right there, is similar outcomes that explore color, typography, manipulation, and composition. So that's what we're going to be aiming to create by the end of this workshop today. So without further ado, let's get to it. So you're going to open up Photoshop, you're going to go to File, New, you're going to name this file Type Experiments. I'm going to make sure that we're on international paper, and the size of the canvas we're going to create is A4, and once you've done that, click OK. Now within Photoshop, all of the tools that you need are on the left hand side, and you're going to bring the mouse down to the icon that looks like a T, and that is our text tool. At the top, you've got your text samples, and you're going to select one which you find to be the most sort of interesting to begin with. At the top here, you can change the size of the font also, and you can change the color of the font that you're going to be typing as well. So to begin with, you're going to click and drag to create your text box. And within the box there, you can type, and your letters should appear within the text box. Now, once we've typed our letter, the next step involved with this is the warp tool. So you're going to put your cursor to the top, click on the T with a line underneath it, and that is going to give you lots of different options in terms of warping the letter that you've typed. So this is where the manipulation and distortion kind of comes into our way of working. So I want you to play around with those values just to see how far you can manipulate the text that you've typed. And what you're hoping to do is to change it to make it look more sort of dynamic and interesting on the eye. So you're going to play around with those values, and once you're happy with the manipulation of the type, you're going to click OK. Now the next step involved is we're going to make our letter 3D. So at the top again, you're going to click on the 3D icon, and a kind of notification box will come up in the middle there. Click on No for that. And what Photoshop is going to do is going to transform your letter into a 3D shape. And again, what you're going to experiment with here, guys, is just the different kind of toggles around the letter. and you're looking to manipulate the letter and distort it even further. So there's lots of different things you can do. As you can see here, you can rotate the letter, you can change the width and the height, and it's just about playing around, like I say, with those values to make the letter more dynamic, but also more visually appealing to the viewer. Once you're pleased with the outcome, you're going to move your cursor over to the layers area within Photoshop, the bottom right. You're going to scroll down and click on the background layer. Okay, once you've done your first letter, I would like you to use those steps to explore different types of typography that Photoshop has within its library, and also different colors, as well as different ways of manipulating the text on your A4 canvas. So as you can see here, I'm just going through the same steps as the first letter, and what I'm hoping to do is to fill the A4 canvas with lots of different examples of manipulated type. Now, if at any point you need to pause the video just to go back to refresh your memory about the different steps, of course you can do that. But as you can see here, I've just sort of sped up the steps so you can see what we're kind of aiming for by the end of the digital stage of the workshop. Okay, so we're nearly finished here. We're just going to add a final letter in, and that will kind of fill our A4 canvas with an interesting composition. And once you've added your final letter, we're going to be printing our composition onto acetate. So to do this, you're going to go to File, Print. You're going to make sure that you have selected the right printer. Then you're going to scroll down, click on the box that says Scale to Fit Media, Print Settings, and within this we're just going to make sure that it's set to A4 and that we're going to be printing in color. And once you've made sure those things are correct, click Print. Okay, so the next step in the workshop is we're going to be cutting out our composition that we created digitally with a pair of scissors. You would have noticed that we've printed out your designs on acetate, which is a clear material, and that's going to help us with our composition in the physical part of this workshop. So that's the next step. Once you've received your printout, you're going to very carefully with the scissors just cut around the outline of your letter designs. Once you've cut out each individual letter, you're going to need to find yourself a piece of A4 paper. And what you're going to do is think really carefully about composition. So you're going to layer your letters on the page. You may wish to rearrange the letters so they're overlapping. And once you're happy with the composition that you've created, very carefully with a glue stick, you're going to apply glue to the back of the letters and stick them down onto your piece of paper. Now, in terms of your composition, there really are no rules here. You can overlap letters, you can perhaps turn them the opposite way around. Your aims are to create a really experimental and a really visually striking composition. So think really carefully about where the letters are on the page, what makes it look sort of the most effective and the most striking on the viewer. You can combine multiple letters, as you can see here. You may wish to think about negative space, landscape or portrait. And hopefully by the end of this workshop, you would have produced some really interesting, visually striking work that explores the use of typography and manipulation.